Good evening, everybody. This is Jackie Close. Welcome to our weekly Zoom webinar tonight. We are very happy and honored to have Dr. Ed Close here to present his oils and frequency presentation. And we're glad to have so many folks online with us. Glad you could be here. I apologize for getting started just a little bit late. We had some computer problems, which happens, technology issues. And so I'm going to let Ed take my seat, and I will try to give him just a little bit of instruction here so he can handle this on his own.
Okay.
This is going to disappear, but so what we're going to do is we're going to share our screen. This is Ed. Say hi. Hi, everybody. And I'm going to click share our screen and bring up his presentation.
Uh-huh.
Now, you can just click here or down, up and down there.
Yeah,
okay.
That's the same as it would be on my computer.
Okay, so there you go.
Okay, hello everybody. Some of you I know were at the meeting the other day, the rally, and so this will be the same slides more or less, updated a little bit, and the commentary will be a little more little fuller than it was then, because we don't really have excuse me, we don't really have that much of a limit on time, so I'll be able to explain things maybe a little more clearly than I did before.
And take questions afterwards.
And also I will take questions afterward, and so that way we can maybe get the most out of this. Now, so what are frequencies, and what do we know about them? You've all heard about frequencies. Everybody has heard that term used, and we're surrounded by vibrations. Frequencies there are three different kinds of vibrations that we'll talk about tonight, and they all occur with frequency. What does a frequency mean? If you just heard that word by itself, you would think, oh, that means how frequent it occurs or how often it occurs. And that is what it means. A frequency is the number of times something repeats within a given period of time. So while we all hear the term frequency, tonight I'm going to try to explain to you from a scientific point of view in a way that hopefully everybody can understand, and will help you to explain this to other people who ask about it, because one of the things that we hear a lot is about the frequencies of essential oils, for example, and we need to know exactly what that means, because the word sometimes means different things to different people. I think most of you know my qualifications, background in mathematics and physics and consciousness studies and so on and so forth. This is just a list of those things. And the fact that I have used essential oils a lot since 1999 to great advantage. And so I have some experience with that. And you all know about the depth of Jackie's training and understanding, and we share ideas and thoughts continuously. So what are frequencies, and what do they have to do with Young Living essential oils? That's going to be the focus of this presentation. Now, frequencies are measurements of anything that vibrates. You may remember that if you had high school or college physics 101, you talked about various kinds of vibrations, sound and light and things like that. But anything is a vibration that has periodic rotations or oscillations or vibrations. For instance, there's something called Brownian motion that you see under a microscope. Can't see it in a telescope, but you see something else there that's related. But Brownian motion relates to the vibration of molecules, which relates to the vibrations of atoms, and on down to quantum vibrations, which we'll talk about all three levels of those tonight and how they relate to the vibrations of essential oils. Now, the caveman on the right, you notice the wheel that he has there has a little green dot on it. If that wheel were rolling across the stage or across the screen, it would trace out a track like these waves at the bottom. If it's going fast, the waves will be closer together and up and down. If it's going slower, they'll be spread apart more. An oscillation is something like a child on a swing, goes back and forth and back and forth. And so that's rotations and oscillations and vibrations that I mentioned. Now, we've all heard, you've all seen professional basketball players spin the basketball on their finger. So to give you an idea of what the source of the word megahertz is, think about a basketball rotating like that with an X on the side of it. Now, one rotation, if that X comes around in exactly 1 second, that's the definition of a hertz. One rotation, one vibration, or one oscillation in 1 second of time. That's 1 hertz. So this is a graph that shows you the difference between 1 hertz and 5 hertz. And you can see it spreads out to 5 or 1. So that's just the number of oscillations, rotations, or vibrations that occur in 1 second on this scale. Now, sound has various frequencies, and we only hear a very limited part. On this slide, you look at the blue or purple right in where the brightest spot on the yellow occurs, and it says acoustic. That means we can hear it. It's acoustic, and that's the range. And below that, with less hertz, you have infrasound, and with more hertz per second, you have ultrasound. So what is a megahertz? A megahertz is mega, and I made a little joke at the meeting the other day that you asked a student one time what megahertz meant to define it. And he said, well, mega means a lot, like mega bucks if you win the lottery. And hertz is what happens if you drop a bowling ball on your foot. So I guess a megahertz is a big pain. Wrong answer. Mega in mathematics and physics means million. It's the metric system word for million. So if a hertz is 1 cycle per second, then a megahertz is 1 million cycles per second. If you go back and think of this again, there'd be 1 million of those zigzags across the screen between 0 and 1 for 1 megahertz. 1 megahertz is 1 million hertz. Why is it called hertz? Well, there was a German physicist named Heinrich Hertz who is really kind of the first scientist who really defined all these things. So they named it after him. That was his last name, was Hertz, H-E-R-T-Z. So we're all familiar with sound waves. That's how we communicate verbally when we're talking to each other. And the sound waves are vibrations that travel through the air, strike your eardrum, vibrates it. The vibrations translated into electric pulses that go through the nerve and then to the brain, and the brain makes sense of it. Now, one thing that will be important to think about is something called resonance. And the best way to understand how that works is with sound waves. If I have two guitars and I pluck a string on one and they're both tuned to standard pitch, then that same string will vibrate on the other guitar, even if it's across the room, as far as, 40 or 50 feet away even. It can vibrate because of resonance, because the sound waves cause it to vibrate. And if it's the same stretch to the same tautness and the same thickness of the string, it will produce the same sound. And this is kind of the basis for a lot of our very complicated technology, communications technology today. So, we've talked so far mainly about what I call macro vibrations, or vibrations that cause sound waves, or vibrations that cause vibrations that we can't hear in higher or lower frequencies. But light works the same way, in the sense that light is made up of various frequencies. And on this slide, you can see that out of all the frequencies of electromagnetic vibration that go on in the universe, we only see a very narrow band, that colored band sort of to the left of middle there. And it gives you an idea how all these other things, radio, radar, television broadcasting, X-rays, cosmic rays, all kinds of different electromagnetic vibrations, and we're surrounded by those all the time. We have hundreds of different vibrations that are going through your home and your workplace and through your body every moment of the day and night, but you don't see them because they're either too high or too low. You don't hear them either for the same reason. We're restricted by our physical senses to very small portions of the spectrum, total spectrums of vibrations, both the physical vibrations of sound and ultrasound and so forth, and the same thing with light. Now this, you see the term nanometer here. A nanometer is 1/1000th of a meter, as it says here. So we go from 1/1,000,000th of a meter, 1/1,000,000th of a, we go from 1/1,000,000th of a meter as a wavelength to over 1 kilometer, which is, was it 5/7 of a mile or something like that. But so the range is very large, and we don't realize that it's the same thing because it seems to be very different than what we see. Now, to give you an idea, since we've now talked about wavelength, how does that relate to frequencies? Frequencies in this, on this slide, F is a frequency. The Greek letter, small letter lambda, is wavelength, and C is the speed of light, which we've used here because we're talking at this point about electromagnetic vibration, which is light and all of the other wavelengths and frequencies. So the frequency is equal to the wavelength times the velocity. And if you go back and think about that slide that we had where we have the waves going by, one after the, before this one, that one there, the waves going by, The wavelength is the distance between where the wave returns to the same point on the line, or returns to that line rather, so that you have one complete wavelength. It's like one sideways S. That's a wavelength. So here we have 5 wavelengths, and there we start out with 1. So the wavelength is the measure of the distance between the points where the wave returns to the line. And so the wavelength, going the wrong way. So this gives you an idea of what we're talking about when we talk about the wavelength and the frequency are closely related. Every vibration or every oscillation has a wavelength and a frequency, and they're related in this way. In other words, the wavelength divided by the frequency is equal to the velocity, or the speed with which the energy is traveling. Okay, that's enough physics and math. Let's go on and talk about vibrations as they relate to the human body and essential oils. This is a diagram of Eastern or Oriental medicine, where they talk about the vibrations of various organs like the heart. And they have vibrations that or frequencies that they have measured in some way. And I want to say that there are various machines for measuring frequencies. And as a scientist, I can't really vouch for all of them because I haven't been able to actually look at these machines and understand how they work. There are only a few of them for measuring frequencies of oils. The Tanio Industries was one that did the measurements originally for Young Living, and their machine, and there's one that was made and developed in Sweden. They are patented machines, and they won't really share with anybody, but somehow they are measuring frequencies. And I'm going to tell you what they have to be measuring, and why there is some controversy about it, and why you'll find some people that will question the idea that essential oils have frequencies. Some of the critics have said that just the range of frequencies is so different between these different kinds of vibrations that it's questionable in their minds that, in fact, they've even said there couldn't be any connection between the frequencies of essential oils and the quantum vibrations or frequencies of the various organs of the body. I do not agree with this opinion, because we're talking about energies in all cases. And if the essential oils have certain frequencies, then those frequencies can impart energy through the process of resonance, which we talked about with the 2 guitars. It's like the oils are transmitting a frequency, or have an energy frequency, so that when they are interacting with the body, whether it's through diffusing or topical application or internal consumption, in all cases, those energies are impacting or interacting with the energies of your body. And if the frequencies are similar, then the transfer of energy is going to be more definite. So let's look at what those energies are and how they might transfer. Here's a list of some of the frequencies of essential oils that are very popular. Of course, I picked these because these are ones that I think most are popular with most people, but they certainly are ones that I like for one reason or another. And I've chosen a range of frequencies from 50 to over 300 because that's the range that that is given for a healthy human body. But I'll also talk about that and what that really means. Also, you can find, Young Living has provided tables of frequencies for all of their oils, and you can find these online. This gives you an idea. Most of the things, a majority of the things listed here are blends, and some of them are single oils. And it sounds reasonable that a single oil would have a frequency, but a blend where you have maybe several oils blended, what would the frequency be there? How would these frequencies relate to each other, or does it have a range of frequencies? Well, let's suppose that you have vibrations that are several vibrations. So like we know that even a single oil can have a lot of organic compounds in it. And as I mentioned before, these vibrations come from quantum and atomic and molecular vibrations within the oils or within any substance. So if you have a lot of them that are going on at the same time, it looks something like this slide here. And you might think, like some of the critics have said, how can you say that this conglomeration of various vibrations can have a specific vibration? Well, it's because of something in physics we call the Fourier analysis, after a French mathematician named Fourier. This analysis says that if you have superimposed vibrations, like you see here, there are two with various small vibrations and large vibrations, that if you can, and there's a mathematical program for doing this, if you can identify a curve that goes through where what's above the curve and below the curve are equal, then you have what I call the dominant frequency of these frequencies superimposed. So many of you are probably familiar with Dr. Stewart's book, The Chemistry of Essential Oils Made Simple, God's Love Manifest in Molecules. In table 11, page 182 in that book, we have the fundamental frequencies of people and things. And we find that he has there a healthy human brain should have a dominant. Now I'm saying dominant frequency, but that means that's the same thing that Dr. Stewart was talking about when he said fundamental frequencies. And I call it dominant because it's the additive frequency that comes out of, like in this slide here, it's the dominant frequency that comes from adding all of these other frequencies together. So a dominant frequency of a healthy human brain should be about 71 to 90 megahertz, and a healthy human body should have a dominant frequency of somewhere between 62 and 68 megahertz. So the brain has a little higher frequency than all of the body put together. So some parts like bone and muscle and so forth have regular resonant frequencies or dominant frequencies as well. And when you add all of them together, that's how you come up with these kinds of numbers. But there's been a scientific breakthrough recently that really does relate to this subject that we're talking about, and that's essential oils and vibrations and what they really mean. A a friend of mine whose name is Stuart Hameroff, who's at the University of Arizona, he's an anesthesiologist, has been studying this for a long time. And he and British mathematician and physicist Sir Roger Penrose were investigating the relationships of the vibrations in the brain to the functioning of consciousness. And what they found was that there are structures in the brain called microtubules, which vibrate at, we call it a quantum vibration, but it's a vibration that originates below the vibrations of the molecules, and these blue and green molecules are different types of tubulin molecules that make up the microtubule. This is an artist's rendition of the microtubule looking in from the end, and they found that there are certain chemical compounds that the brain secretes that tag these the layers of these on the inside that relate to various stages of consciousness. And the frequencies of essential oils are, as we saw, in the megahertz range, and Dr. Hameroff found that the megahertz frequencies also occur in the activated microtubules in the brain. So here we see some scientific papers, and they've published a number of papers in scientific journals around the world showing that these vibrations do exist and they have a relationship to various functions. In this case, they're looking primarily at brain function and how these can affect. Now, we've been told, and you've seen this recently, that a lot of people talk about energy fields that surround the human body, consisting of a whole suite of vibrational frequencies that are constantly radiating out from your body. And Penrose and Hameroff have found that the vibratory states of the microtubules in the brain are correlated with states of consciousness. They believe that enhancing the brain microtubule vibrations will enhance cognitive functions such as mental clarity and focus. This supports the idea that essential oils of certain types, which the other side of this is Young Living in particular, and a lot of other people in France and other countries as well, have conducted experiments and studies showing that certain oils have vibrations that have effects on different parts of the human body. And that understanding, coupled with this breakthrough that says that the same levels, the same range of vibratory frequencies occur in a healthy brain as occur in certain oils, supports the idea that by adding these oils, and with the concept that I mentioned a couple of times earlier of resonance, actually transfers energy to that area, making the function stronger and more energetic, which is generally a good thing. Now, there's some more good news in this, in that there are microtubules in every cell in your body. They're not just in the brain. So this means that various, and well, obviously they're going to have different dominant frequencies or fundamental frequencies than the brain microtubules. So this is again evidence that the essential oils vibrations of different oils can have effects on different parts of the body to transfer energy to and it's a general principle that more energy means a more vital state of health. And so these can reasonably be expected to help keep your immune system strong and the functioning of your body in general very strong, and promote wellness. Now, there's important points to remember here, and I've got them on the screen, and you can, if you can copy these down, but let me kind of simplify it for you in that there are three types of frequency vibrations that we're talking about that relate to vibrations or frequencies of essential oils to frequencies of the human body. They're electromagnetic, that's like light, although it exceeds the light band that we can see. And macromechanical, that's like sound, but again, what we can hear is only a small part of it. And quantum mechanical, which is what goes on at the quantum level inside the atoms and quarks and electrons and so forth that make up the atoms, that make up the molecules, that make up the organs of the body and the structure of everything else in the universe. And of course, these interacting forms of energy are ubiquitous, which just means that we live in an ocean of energies. They're around us all the time. All we need to learn to do is how to tap into them. It's kind of like how your television set taps into these vibrations that are out there being broadcast. We don't see them, we don't feel them, but the television's capable of picking them up. Same way, these energies, these vibrations, these frequencies are far too rapid, megahertz, millions of hertz, millions of vibrations per second. They're far too rapid for our physical senses to be able to detect. But the brain, the tubules in the brain act like the receiver in a television set or a radio set or your iPhone. Those vibrations activate vibrations within the receiving microtubules in your brain and in your various organs and parts of your body. Pure essential oils are complex organic compounds with many frequencies, and we've talked about that, but each one of them is like a bundle of a range of vibrational energies that have a dominant frequency that can affect and transfer energy to various organs and parts of the human body. The frequencies that are assigned to essential oils and blends by Young Living, I would say that these are their dominant frequencies. Bear in mind that these might change slightly from one bottle of oil to another because of the fields they're grown in, the season, the amount of rain, the minerals in the soil, various things like that that have an effect, but they'll be within that range, within a few megahertz of the number that's shown. I can't attest to those exact numbers as a scientist because I'm not able to get detailed knowledge about the machines that are used to measure them. Now, finally, pure essential oils can deliver energies in frequencies that can be absorbed by, resonate with, and energize every cell in your body. So that's the takeaway message from this presentation, is that essential oils, if they're not diluted with carrier oils or alcohol or other things that will change their frequency considerably, if they're not diluted or polluted with other materials, they can deliver energies in the frequency ranges that are healthy for your physical body and the organs that make it up. Could this be why the Bible mentions plants, resins, and oils of plants so many times, specifying certain oils for spiritual and health applications? I think it is. And if you've read Dr. David Stewart's book, the popular book, Healing Oils of the Bible, you'll find that he says there are 1,031 references to essential oils, aromatic oil-producing plants, and their applications in the Bible, including at least 33 different species of plants that produce essential oils. Now, you probably know, if you've read that book, that and you probably may be surprised, and you know that many people will be surprised, that the basis for the use of essential oils in maintaining wellness was well known in biblical times and was used by the elite, the kings and the pharaohs and people that could afford the essential oils, because they had to be collected from many kinds, like frankincense from the southern tip of the Arabian Peninsula, and brought up to centers of civilization like Egypt and the Holy Land and Damascus, and later on even into Europe through the frankincense trails and incense. But it's not surprising if you think about the fact that there were no pharmacies, there were no pharmaceutical industries in biblical time, and the Bible specifically says that the plants are provided for your medicines, and that was the understanding then. So why is this not emphasized more in the Bible, or more obvious? Well, obviously the Bible was not written as a medical book. It was written as a spiritual book and for spiritual teaching purposes. But in fact, the Bible is full of references to using. I remember there's one place where Moses is told by God to use a blend of 3 sweet oils, and they're named galbanum, and others, that will maintain his health, and he lived to be 140 years old. So there may be a bit more to this than a lot of people are willing to admit, and if this kind of information, you have the basis for, hopefully, for answering questions that people have about frequencies of essential oils. Now, I think we're at the point where we can go to questions. I got Jackie to come back in and help me, since this is her computer. Our technical difficulties we had to do with getting things set up on my computer. So here we go. And Jackie, maybe you can tell them what they need to do to submit questions.
Okay, so if you want to type your questions in the chat, you're asking if this will be recorded so you can review it again.
Mm-hmm.
And it is being recorded. You will have to send me a request for the recording, because I don't have a way to send it to everybody who registered. So if somebody needs the recording, you'll have to send me a request either by private messenger, through Facebook, or through our email if you're in our Young Living organization.
Can they go to our website if they, and that way if they're not members of our organization?
I don't know if I can upload it to the website or not. I'll have to talk with Joshua and find out.
Okay.
Do you have other questions about the information that was presented?
Did I do such a good job that everybody understood it completely and have no questions, or did I not explain it well enough for you to be able to ask questions?
If you're raising your hand, we need you to type into the chat box, because we can't handle raised hands. it tells us that 2 people have raised their hands. Let's see.
Yeah,
You did great.
Thank you.
Yes, wonderful job. What is the best method of application?
That's not a one single answer question. Application depends on the situation. For application, generally, for like to activate the brain tubules and bring energy in that way, would probably be through diffusing it with a diffuser. It can be applied topically too, but then it has to penetrate. If you put it on top of your head, like they did in biblical times, they called it anointing. It will penetrate through the skin and so forth and get into the system. But breathing it, some of the oils do, like frankincense, and my understanding is they pass the so-called blood-brain barrier, so they can have an effect on the brain and other organs. But all 3 methods of application can be effective depending upon where you want the effect to happen in your body. Topical, or in the case of essential oils, make sure they're pure essential oils, of course, because if they're diluted or degraded or have other things in them, you don't want to ingest them, or maybe not even apply them topically. But the best thing is to make sure you've got pure essential oils that have been tested by independent laboratories in the way that Young Living does.
And does diffusing them with a water diffuser affect the frequencies?
No, it doesn't, because for a couple of reasons. One is they are oils, so they don't actually mix with the water. You're not getting a complete mixture. So, and water, we know, will take on some of the characteristics of any chemical that is included in it, or any compound that's any organic compound. So it should not affect that. You'll get maybe a less potent effect because you've watered down the oils with the water. But as far as changing the frequencies, no.
Are we, when layering the oils on the body, such as in Raindrop, are we to assume that the body frequency is elevated, thus staving off certain illnesses? We really cannot discuss illnesses in any way, shape, or form, but elevating the body frequency will make a difference in the body's manifesting of wellness. So layering the oils, you're going to get a different frequency with each of the oils. I'll let you.
Yeah, and the layering, many of you know that Dr. Gary Young is, what's the right word? He's a medical empath, he has intuitive, that's the word I was looking for. And he's had a lot of experience doing this, and the laboratory people out in Utah, I spent a couple of different times meeting and visiting with them and having a tour of the lab and talking about what they do. And they have a very scientific setup where they relate the vibrations or the frequencies, the vibrational frequencies of oils to certain conditions or of the body. As Jackie says, we're not allowed to claim that they're going to cure illnesses, but they they certainly will bring energy into the system of your body. And the science behind it is both the science, the physics of frequencies, supports it, as you've seen in what we just talked about, and the 20 plus or 30 years, I don't know how long it is now, of experience that the scientists at Young Living have, and scientists elsewhere, that have with determining what particular oils. Now, Gary, being an intuitive, has the ability to know, and he's taken the raindrop method was taken from some things that the Lakota Indians used, and with his intuitive sense of what oils do what, and some science from the lab of determining with correlations, he has a good knowledge, and that's how of these things, and that's how the raindrop technique was devised. So they're layered for a particular reason, and each layer imparts oil frequencies of different levels, or energies of different frequencies is a better way to say it, and they penetrate sequentially into the system.
Just to add a little bit to that, I had a program that was created by HeartMath years and years ago, and I did raindrop at, we had a place where I did raindrop for people on a regular basis. And I used to have them come in. This program that HeartMath had developed was set up to determine if there was a balance in the autonomic nervous system. And all it was you put a little heart monitor on somebody's finger, and you had them sit there for a few minutes, and it took a lot of measurements of heart rate and body temperature and other things, and correlated that with balance in the autonomic nervous system. Every single person that I tested before doing raindrop was out of balance. And afterwards, I would give them water, let them walk around for 2 or 3 minutes, and then I would have them sit down and put the heart monitor back on and record the results. Every single person was in complete balance in their autonomic nervous system. Now, I know of an MD who said the balance in the autonomic nervous system is a good representative of health in the body. And so doing raindrop brings about balance in the autonomic nervous system. And that can really be a very powerful thing for the people that you're working with. Now, how would you get your brain or body to the correct dominant frequency?
Well, there is no correct dominant frequency that's the same for all people. It would be slightly different for everybody, and slightly different depending upon your age and your health and so forth. The best dominant frequency, I think, would be the higher one. The higher you can get it, it means you're going to have more energy there, and it's going to promote wellness and improve your chances of staying healthy.
One other thing I would add is that there are a lot of studies on PubMed using essential oils, and you can do a search on Google for frankincense oil, or you can use the botanical name Boswellia carteri or Boswellia sacra. You can use other oils, or you can look up just essential oils. Now, not all of those tests are valid tests, but it's good to know that there are studies, and most of them have been done since 1975. The great majority of them here in the United States have been done since 1975. The majority of the research before that had been done in France and Germany and Italy and in Egypt and Africa and Turkey, number of places like that. But there's a huge body of research from Europe that goes back 200 years. So this isn't something that's new. This is something that has actually been around for quite a long time, but lost favor because of the availability of synthetics and the ability to reproduce those under very controlled circumstances, and of course reduce costs and not be subject to whatever happened in the environment that year that could destroy an entire crop. So that was why there was a move away from natural products, but that doesn't mean that they can't help us. It just means that they can be used in integrative medicine. They can be used in combination with other things, depending on what you're dealing with. But it's a really powerful thing to know that there is a tremendous amount of research you can access online these days. You know, when I started learning about essential oils in 1995, we really had very little information available on the internet. It was very hard to access. And it wasn't until 1999 and a little bit after that that things became much easier. I was pretty adept at doing research online. In fact, people were shocked at what I was able to find, but you just had to know how to put in the right search terms to find it. So if you do just a little bit of work, you can find a tremendous amount of research on essential oils and really educate yourself, and I would really recommend that. And of course, today we've got, oh my gosh, how many books do we have on essential oils? Yeah. And when I started, there was almost none.
Yeah. Yeah, I know we're probably preaching to the choir for most of you, but as closer to natural you can get, the better. And not to say that medical science isn't good and that doctors aren't great. I'm working right now doing research with a team that has at least 5 doctors, 5 medical doctors, and some neuroscientists on it. So I have a great regard for doctors, especially if they're broad-minded enough to look at things like essential oils and consider the usefulness of them either in conjunction or prior to. Unfortunately, our medical system is basically a system which deals with disease. So, and that's what they study. If you look at most medical research, at the hospitals and places like that, they're talking about diseased human beings, not healthy ones. And their methods to try to help are extreme in the sense that they always have side effects. So the best thing is to take responsibility for your health and use natural things as much as you possibly can, and
do appropriate research.
And yes, and learn. That's part of taking responsibility for your own health, is do the research, learn as much as you can. If you can't understand some of it, find somebody who does and ask them to help you. There's just so much information out there now that there's good and bad, and sometimes it's hard to tell which is which. But you can tell, and I've done a lot of looking at the negative side of things online. You can tell if somebody has an agenda if they're not really looking at both sides of the issue, if they're condemning one side and promoting the other. And you should never accept that. You should look at both sides and try to understand which side perhaps has the most fact and the most scientific information, and do your own research and come to your own conclusions, because it's your body, or if you are a health professional, it's your client and your patient that you're trying to help, and you want to do the best job for them that you can.
Just to give you an idea, before I found essential oils, I had been, in 1985, I was diagnosed with cancer and given less than 2 months to live. I lost my insurance because I had a terminal diagnosis. And so I went into self-care. And how many years ago was that now? Let's see, 30 something. And started changing my diet drastically. Now, I did a lot of other things, meditation and visualization, and really working on keeping a positive mind and a positive mindset. And that takes a lot of work. You have to shut off the news and find things that feed the positive side of your life and don't take you into negative thought patterns. And so I did that, and I had done that for over 10 years, and I was introduced to essential oils, and I thought I had a pretty profound experience the very first time I was introduced to essential oils. And I thought, I've got to learn everything there is to know about these things. And through their help, I went from being a very sick individual Now, diet and exercise and meditation and visualization and positive thinking, all of this is part of it. But when I did the diet and worked on what I was putting into my body and got that under control, I still had migraine headaches. I still had sciatica. I'd had it for 20 years. I was in a wheelchair 2 to 3 days a week and just in constant, continuous pain. And my chiropractor, I'd see him 3 to 5 times a week, and he told me my next step was surgery. And all of that changed within a year, but of the time that I got introduced to Young Living essential oils, because I started using a lot of oils. And I not only changed all of these things in my diet that I had done, which was very important, and all the other things I was doing, but I also got rid of all of the hazardous chemicals that most of us, if you're not already using Young Living products in every area of your home, most of us have a house full of toxic chemicals because our personal care products are full of it, the cleansing products that we use, the things we clean our clothes with, the shampoo, everything has chemicals and synthetics in it. And I was a chemically sensitive person. But within a year of the time I got these things out of our life and really focused on maintaining my health and taking care of myself with all of these different areas, then suddenly all of my pain went away. And that pain never came back. And my chiropractor, when he had people he couldn't help, would send them to me. So we know that a lot of what is happening with people that takes a long time for it to build up has to do with the toxic chemicals and the other things that are in your environment, mold, and there are just so many things.
Yeah, let me add a little to that in that as a scientist, trained as a scientist, I was skeptical because that's what a scientist does. You're skeptical until you have proof. And at the age of, 64, something like that, I was starting to have some problems, and the doctor I talked to said, well, you're just getting old. Well, that's more than 15 years ago now. And what made me a believer was not only Jackie's experience, but my own, in finding that my health improved and did not worsen any. And here I am, celebrated my 81st birthday in October, and I'm basically healthy. I don't take any pharmaceuticals whatsoever, not even over-the-counter drugs, not even aspirin. I use food supplements, and I use some vitamins and the oils, and that's all it takes. Now, if I could go from, as being an environmental engineer who had been exposed to toxic chemicals in closing, I was the engineer in charge of closing several military bases that had all kinds of toxic chemicals. And even though we wore protective clothing, moon suits even, you could smell the chemicals when you got out of your car, or even before you got out of your car, a quarter of a mile away from the actual site. And so these bioaccumulate in the body. So by the time I was in my 60s, I was having some health problems because of that, and absolutely turned it around. So we're both living testimonials to the effectiveness of using natural, pure essential oils.
We don't know the frequency, or I don't, of Ningxia Red. I have no idea. But it has essential oils in it, of lemon and uzu and tangerine, and I can't remember all of them. There's 3 or 4 different essential oils in Ningxia Red, in addition to the fruits. And the fruits will all have frequencies as well. So.
One thing you could do, now the fruit's a different thing, but you can look at the individual oils and look at the table, like the one we shown, take that frequency, take all of them, add them up, and get an average. Now, this won't be exactly what you'll have, but it'll be in the general range.
Okay, unless you've got more questions, we'll let that do it for tonight. Thank you all for joining us. We're glad you could be here with us, and we hope you found this helpful. And if we did, send us a like on Facebook and let us know. We appreciate that. Okay?
Yeah, and stay healthy.
God bless everybody. Good night.
Good night.